Good, Amanda. Everybody here, so good. I'm so happy to see you all. So here I am, like I said, I'm in Italy, and what I'm going to talk about today is what I started yesterday. It's really mind blowing, I tell you. I went to Venice. I've never been to Venice before. I've seen bits of Italy, but where I'm staying, Padova, is not very far from Venice. And I decided I'd go to Venice. But what struck me, it blew my mind, is that Venice is drowning. I mean, if you know about Venice, it was built actually 1,600 years old. They built it. Don't ask me what kind of person would think to do that. They built it. They put these enormous trees into the ground. They've built it on these trees in the ground, in the water. I mean, I can't believe this weird place. I can't get over it. It fascinates me. But the point is, it's drowning. I mean, of course, everything's impermanent. Buildings collapse, relationships finish, people die. But this is the thing that blew my mind, because there's this amazing city. It's so famous. Everyone loves the idea of Venice, all these romantic stories about Venice. And it's everywhere you go is water. So they have these extra sort of like bridge-like things you have to walk on, because it's always flooded with water, because the water, it's sinking. So there we have these beautiful buildings that everyone's so attached to. And for me, it just completely reminded me of what we're all like in our lives. If you're completely blinded by attachment for something, let's say in a relationship, everybody else can see that he can't stand you anymore. You're the only one who can't see it, because your attachment is so enormous and you're so fearful of losing and you're so possessive. You can't see that he's given you up. And that's why we get shattered, because when we've got the key point the Buddha's making about our delusions, and this is really what's fascinating, whether it's attachment, anger, jealousy, depression, these states of mind, these emotional dramas, completely blind us. It's so fascinating. I mean, we can see it, but we don't really join the dots, So when you're really attached to something, and it's kind of, you're dazzled by it, like a beautiful city like Venice, let's say. But there it is. People are walking in plastic on their boots, because you're sloshing through water through the famous, where it is, where the Marco, what do you call it, St. Marco Cathedral, the Basilica. Everywhere you go, it's flooded, So it's not like just a freak flood. So it's actually gradually sinking into the water. But we still get attacked. The relationship is sinking. The relationship is dying, We don't notice. So it's such a lesson for me. I mean, it still blows my mind. I'm still so fascinated by this place. But this is the thing. We have to be realistic, So this is the point, one of the first teachings Buddha gives. See, Buddha's deal is that all these unhappy states of mind lead us up garden paths. They blind us from reality. And that sounds very brutal, because we sort of think, well, it's nice to have fantasies. Why can't I have fantasies? It's okay to have a fantasy, think about something. But I mean, when we're blinded from seeing what is true, this is what's interesting point for the Buddha. That's the reason there is suffering in the universe, because we believe in the stories that our deluded minds tell us. And that's what's fascinating. I mean, it's like we're not living in reality, in other words. And that's, like I said, about the example of a relationship. Everybody else can see it. He doesn't love you anymore. You're the last person to know it, because attachment causes us to cling to the hope of it, to the idea of it, I mean, it's like Miami Beach. Have you read about Miami Beach? People still continue to buy their $20, $30 million houses in Miami Beach. But the poor parts of Miami Beach, the evidence is right there. They're flooding. I mean, the ground upon which Miami Beach is built is porous. You read all the drama stories, but if you're so attached to your beautiful house in Miami Beach and you don't notice the poor section where they're up in water, their knees up into water, you're blinded. You can't see it. You don't want to know about it. That's the thing about attachment. You don't want to know about reality. It's too painful. Such a good analogy. I'm still blown out by seeing Venice. I can't get over it, Amazing. It blew my mind. But I mean, I never wanted to go there, mostly because it just gave me the creeps, all this water. Because you've got to get a boat, you get there, you get a car, you drive, you park your car in a big car park, then you get the boat. And it kind of goes like like a bus, you go around all the stops. But all this water, there's no cars in Venice. You just have these gondolas but it's kind of like, it's meant to be so romantic. But when you see it half flooding, you can't be romantic, I promise. I mean, it's still beautiful. I'm sure it is. And still the fanciest hotels with $1,000 a night rooms and everything for the rich people who live up a few floors up above the water. Anyway, it's just this fascinating experience for me. I can't get over it, I tell you. So now I'm in Padova, which is an ancient city as well, probably very old in Italy, probably more than 1,000 years old, these cities around up north in Italy. It's very interesting. Anyway, here I am, blah, 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 talking about impermanence. So what's the learning from this? The learning from this, from the Buddha's teachings, and it's sort of evident. You don't need to be a scientist. You don't need to be clever. It's not religious to know this. His very first teaching is, listen, guys, hey, guess what, folks? Things change. And it seems almost absurd to point it out, doesn't it? But this is a tragedy. Because of attachment, which has a fantasy about things, and that makes you all excited, makes you anticipate, all excited. It also makes you want to possess the thing. It wants you to hold on to the thing. It makes you fearful of losing the thing or the person, whatever it might be. And that fear is so enormous. But because it's normal for us, we don't even notice that it's fear. It's just our normal way. So because of the clinging to it, the wanting of it not to change, the wanting it not to go away, the wanting of it not to end, then we grasp onto it in this frantic hope that it won't change, But the reality is, Buddha's pointing this out, it's so fascinating, it's so evident to anybody with half a brain, that it's not just some interesting thing that happens occasionally, that the universe itself is in the very nature of change, millisecond by millisecond, things are disintegrating. It's just the way things are. It's not cynical, it's not being negative, it's reality. But this is the thing, when we see the relationship between grasping at things as permanent and the attachment, these separate states of mind, they work hand in hand to cause us unbelievable pain, So you look how we think, look how we talk. Let's say you're hungry for a relationship, nothing wrong. Have a relationship, please. And then you have this person, you fall in love, and we say these words. We say, listen, finally I found happiness, we'll say. So what we mean by finally I found it, it means now I've got it. Think about this. We've got it and it's set in stone. Like you get it and you lock it in and now I've got it. That very way we say things indicates how we grasp at things as unchanging. Now I've got it, It's a very powerful concept. But the thing is, we have got it, but it's changing. It's in the actual process of disintegration. In the Buddhist teachings, there are these extensive teachings on the way things change in a subtle level, moment by moment by moment, So it's quite a powerful realization, because so what will be the consequence? Think of it this way. What's the consequence of realizing, even to some degree, that everything is in the nature of change? Well, this is the point. When you've got attachment, instinctively you don't want it to change, which is why you cling to it as not changing. Finally, I found happiness. Or as I always quote, one Hollywood, it doesn't matter, one actor, I always said her name, but it sounds like it's not fair to mention her. She said, when she was in love with her husband and got the children, the husband, everything was perfect, she said, we will be together until we're 80. So let's analyze that statement. It's totally fascinating. What she meant was attachment, fell in love with somebody, had the family, had the children, had the career, everything was gorgeous. And there's nothing wrong with everything being gorgeous. There's nothing wrong with everything going well. It's wonderful. It's a great blessing to have everything go well. But because you're attached to it, you can't bear the thought that it will end, not to mention change moment by moment. So when you've got something that's beautiful and then you're attached to it, then you would say exactly, we will be together until we are 80. So analyze that for a moment. What is she saying? It's very fascinating. What she's saying is, because it felt so delicious right now, nothing wrong with that. You see, because it's delicious now, and because we cling to it as not changing, and we don't realize we do that, then we assume that tells us we will be together until we're 80. And we say it with such certainty, but it's literally a fantasy. You might be together until you're 80, but just because it feels good doesn't mean it will last. This is the point. Now you look at the opposite. This is our tragedy. So what happened, in fact, was the husband left her in a year or something, married got a younger version. So then, of course, what happens when you have this intense attachment and then you believe you're going to be together until you're 80 and you're only about 25 at the moment? You can only imagine the suffering, can't you? The absolute devastation when you believe in your heart, this is going to last until we're 80. You believe it utterly. And then when it doesn't, of course, what do you think the response is? Absolutely devastated. That's the suffering of grasping at things that are in the process of change. And when it does change, or he dies on you, or the relationship ends, or whatever happens, it is devastating. Much of the reason it's devastating, the reason you suffer so terribly, is because you believed it would last. People say we will be together forever. We say these things because it's delicious. We make this false assumption it therefore must last. It's very fascinating because when you analyze those two concepts, there's no logic whatsoever. But because it's delicious, we believe it'll last. Now, look what happened when the bubble burst, when he left her for a younger version. What happened? The attachment bubble burst. She crashed down to despair, and listen to this. Now you think the devastation and the despair will last forever. You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's why people kill themselves, because now you believe that the suffering is permanent. So we go up and down like yo-yos in this craziness of hanging on to the bliss, believing it's permanent. It ends because it's in the nature to end. You're not sure when. And then the suffering happens, the darkness occurs, the depression happens, and now you believe that will last forever. And so, of course, it's unbearable. This is just the mistake of grasping at things as permanent. This is an evident mistake. This is something that anybody with half a brain can see. This is one of Buddha's first teachings. It's profound already. So, of course, it's hard because it's so instinctive to grasp at things as permanent, good or bad. So we've got to look at our minds, So then the thing what happens is this, because we then hear, this is the mistake we make. So because we then start to think, oh, well, things change, nothing's going to be permanent, nothing will last. We then go, well, if my husband could leave me at any moment, if he could die at any moment, why bother? Why not just sit back and go, okay, everything's changing, I might as well die now. No, that's nihilism. The reality is that everything is changing. It's the nature of everything. So when you realize this is the point. You then make the most of it. You make the most of it because you know it can end. You know it's changing moment by moment. You make the most of it. You enjoy it all the more. This is the interesting point. I remember I always use the example when I was living in California years ago in the 90s, and I in the winter, I'd sometimes go off and do retreat doing my editing. I call them my editing retreats. I always tell this story. And one time somebody in Puerto Rico invited me to come. There's a center there. And they asked me, they invited me to come. They invited me to come to stay, and they found me a place where I stayed for 9 weeks. I was editing a book. So I had 9 weeks in this gorgeous place. And this is just an analogy. This gorgeous place is an analogy for life, okay? Everything was wonderful. This is a delicious place. It was by the beach. It was so delicious. It was a beautiful weather. It was December, but the gorgeous sun, 2 minutes from the ocean. I remember I kind of bought this pink sarong, and I wore my pink sarong every day. I edited in my pink sarong. I walked in my pink sarong, and I swam in my pink sarong. I didn't think people would know I'm a Buddhist, but they all knew I was a nun. So they used to go like this, Anyway, I had this just the analogy. It was this gorgeous place. Now, this is the point. I knew it was only 9 weeks. So every day I'd look on the calendar, one day going, one day closer to leaving to the airport to freezing Boston, where it was 10 degrees below. So this is the point. I realized this 9 weeks was really impermanent. And this is the point. If you tend to think, well, if it's impermanent, why bother? No, it's the exact opposite. Because it was only 9 weeks, because every day I looked at the calendar, a very vivid feeling of one day gone, one day closer to leaving, then every day you would never just waste your time. If you forgot it was impermanent, if I forgot that place was impermanent, and I start to get, this is the point, I get all too attached to my apartment, attached to my nice things. Then one morning I might wake up a bit depressed. Oh, I can't be bothered swimming today. I can't be bothered today. I'll do it tomorrow. Because when you think everything's permanent, you put everything off, you get lazy, you can't be bothered because you think it's going to last for eternity. No, I would never waste one day. I'd go walking, I'd go to the restaurant, I'd use my time every minute because I knew it was ending soon. So when you know everything's impermanent, you value it more, you use it more, you get the most from it. And then when it does end, you're not surprised. You're ready for it. It's very sensible. Very sensible. So it's the opposite of what we think. You don't become depressed. You actually wake up. You don't want to waste it because you know it's so precious. So this life, that's how the Lamas talk about this life. It's so precious, this human life. It's so amazing. If we understand karma, we understand how much hard work we must have done just to get this human body and this human life. It would bliss us out, I tell you. But because we take it for granted, and then all we do is remember all the bad things, we groan and complain, and life's a drag and blah, 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 you know? But when you realize it's something precious, you worked hard to get it, you never want to waste it. Just like that 9 weeks in Puerto Rico, just an example. I never wasted one day of it because it was going to end soon. I make the most of it. That's the way to think, you know. I remember one time in one talk, one teaching, one woman would say she lived in fear every day that her husband would die. This is an example. You know, the other one, the fear of losing something. Every day she'd worry about that he could die. So she said, what can I do? What can I do? I said, well, the first thing is you have to realize he will die. Don't just go, oh, he's not going to die. Yes, he's going to die. I'm sorry. So you've got to face the reality first. You face the fact that he will die, that it will change, that everything is impermanent. You face that direct fact. Then not just get depressed about it, but then I said, when you realize he will die, meaning when I realize my 9 weeks in Puerto Rico will finish, I don't just get depressed, I use it all the more. So I said, then you will appreciate him more. And then when you go to bed and you wake up in the morning, he's still alive, it's a bonus, he's still there. So you make the most of every day. That's the correct attitude. And it makes such sense, you know. I mean, you know that you go away for 2-day vacations. You don't say, oh, well, it's not going to last. Why bother? You appreciate it all the more because it's only 2 days. You use every moment that you can. That's the perfect example. So the attitude when you know everything is changing, and the fact is with relationships, she did never expect that he would leave her in a year. You know, he never expected. Or people who die, you never expect it. It's devastating when the object of our attachment dies, you know, whether it's a baby or your husband, you know. Because we grasp at them as permanent. But the tragedy is we don't realize we grasp at them as permanent. We just take it all for granted, you know. We just don't even think. We don't analyze our minds, you know. So even just seeing that everything is every day, thinking it, remembering it, it's a wake-up call. You get more enthusiasm. And that's, again, the nice analogy about the Puerto Rico place. Let's say I forgot it was permanent. Let's say I forgot it wasn't my place and I was going to live there forever. First, I become lazy and can't be bothered. Oh, I'll swim tomorrow. And then I get all possessive about all the things and the cushions. It's my cushions and my house and my this. And then the next door neighbor, say, was playing loud music. I start to sue him. But then when you realize it's impermanent, when you realize I'll be out of there in 9 weeks, you relax more. Well, it's all changing. It'll pass. You don't get so upset about things. You let things go more easily. You forgive your old grandmother because you're not, you know, it's all passing. It's a very powerful teaching, thinking about impermanence. And of course, the most radical one is thinking about the impermanence of death. That this person we think is so permanent will drop dead one day. As Lama Zopa says, the best way to think is I'll die today. It sounds so shocking for us, you know. So what's the consequence of that? When you realize you're impermanent, you realize what you are and what you've got is incredible because you worked so hard to get it. So you don't want to waste it. Then you realize that you could die today. Then you make the most of it, just like I made the most of my Puerto Rico holiday. You make the most of it. You don't want to waste it. That's the attitude. It's very practical. Then if you wake up in the morning, it's a bonus. Another day, you know. Make the most of every day. So as many good seeds as you can. Practice, be useful, be beneficial. This is just realizing impermanence. It's nothing. It's really simple in comparison with, say, emptiness or bodhicitta, you know. But it's a very profound, practical approach. But the thing of grasping at things as permanent, it's not articulate. We don't think it like that. It's deeply instinctive in our minds, you know. It's deeply instinctive. So we've got to unpack it. We've got to see the assumptions. In other words, you know we get depressed. We know we feel lonely and sad. We know this. We know we get all excited about things. It's up and down, isn't it? Both are much worse because we think they're permanent. You know, when you're depressed and down, you think it'll last forever. This is the point. What's so interesting. That's why this person who said we will be together until we're 80, when something's all delicious, it feels like it will be forever. But it's just a complete projection that we add on top of it. It's exactly the same when there's a depression and suffering and hopelessness. We believe and feel it will last forever. We cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel. So this grasping at things as permanent is very primordially deep inside us, you know. We've really got to unpack it and then argue with it. And then if you really have this attitude, you're more stable and you're more optimistic. You make the most of every opportunity. You don't waste your life. It's very profound. That's why in the Lamb Rim, as you know, it's the very first teaching Buddha gives. Think about impermanence, especially the impermanence of this person. The action point from that is to not waste it. And of course, the Buddhist view, wasting it means doing anything less than not harming others. This is the very first level of practice. At least refrain from harming, refrain from sowing negative seeds in your mind that'll ripen as your future suffering. That's the basic attitude, you know, the basic practice, actually. So I don't know, tell me what you think. Any questions from all that? Or any questions of any description at all? Talk to me. Any questions there in the notes, Anna, or Mary in the
Not at the moment, Venerable.
All right, darling. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Phoebe, sweetheart, talk to me.
Good morning. I asked this of Venerable Cudrow the other day. I had seen
wonderful.
I saw a video a few weeks ago about the future of our universe as postulated by physicists and particle physicists. I admitted to her that it electrified me, the idea of something that we consider to be very permanent on a universal time scale, our universe, our galaxy, our very world, and that in 74 trillion, this almost uncountable number of years, that everything that we know will be gone. We will be gone, the Earth will be gone, our galaxy will be gone, and nothing will be left but cooling photons.
Right.
And the dark energy that drives the expansion of the universe. And we know that this will happen because it's already happened. Stars that we see are already. So I wrote to her and I was like, you know, I know the parable of Buddha with the arrows. I know that story, but at the same time, the idea that there was nothing to come back for as a Buddha mind really, you know, kind of jogged my equanimity for a while. I really kind of obsessed about it. There was no kind of, and, you know, for me to drive myself to write to somebody to ask about their opinion of, you know, Buddha and Buddhism has so many wonderful ideas and so much common sense. I was like, there has to be an answer for this. What happens when there's nothing? And, you know, she gave me a good idea that we end up wherever there's other minds.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So what's interesting, this is where it's a completely different view, because if we see now with the scientific view, we're speaking from the perspective of our being in the center of this universe, not this universe being one of many. We see it as the universe, so we're the center of it. So it makes sense what you're saying. But the Buddhist approach, and this is where it sounds a bit abstract, but it's very fascinating, especially when you look at the Vajrayana explanation. The world is consisting of universes. There are billions and trillions of sentient beings, number one. And the lovely term in Tibetan is mind possessor. There are trillions of mind possessors. Humans are a tiny percentage. Animals are a smaller percentage than the others that we can't even see. There are trillions of mind possessors, number one. But what's fascinating from the Vajrayana point of view, which is this view of the universe, is that all matter, this is how they used to talk about 1,000 years ago in our culture. Now the Indians and the Chinese still talk this way. It's made of the 4 elements. So sure, physicists don't talk that way now, but that was our physics from 1,000 years ago, when the time of Galileo or whatever. So there's the 4 elements, and they still use that model. So the 4 elements is the nature of all matter. This is what's fascinating about the law of karma. Minds are beginningless and endless. And every millisecond of what a mind, and okay, sorry, one more thing. All minds are inextricably linked to their own set of the four elements. So, if you take the Vajrayana model, we've got gross consciousness, subtle consciousness, and very subtle consciousness, inextricably linked to their appropriate levels of physicality. So the gross body is obviously this bag of bones here. So when the sensory consciousness, which is the gross consciousness, ceases at the time of death, this deconstruction process, we then get to the subtle level of consciousness, which is more the mental states, which are more subtle, and they are inextricably linked to their own wind and all their different physical energies, the four elements. And this wind energy in particular is coursing through these 72,000 subtle channels, this nervous system. And then whatever the mind does impacts upon those subtle wind energies. And then that produces the future bodies, it produces future universes. So even physical universes, they are the four elements, but the configuration of them is the result of actions of minds, of karma. So in the Buddhist view, literally over eons of time, minds are the creator. Because, for example, as Lama Zopa said, when your mind, let's say, is angry, that subtle state of mind pollutes the wind energy connected to your anger, and then that produces future sickness of your physical body and produces the habit to be angry. And then eventually it impacts upon the external elements, and that impacts upon and causes the disharmony of the physical elements. So even the physical universes, the universes that exist are the constructs of eons of actions of minds. We are the creators of all universes. So wherever minds will be, and they'll never end until they're enlightened, they're going to create hell realms, spirit realms, animal realms, human realms. I mean, before this human realm, Phoebe, this always sounds like science fiction to us, before this planet, there were much more advanced human lives where our minds were more subtle, conjoined with light. They lasted thousands of years, but eventually attachment began to arise, and that polluted the virtue. And now we're born on a planet looking like a bunch of apes. This is a deluded environment. So yes, of course it's going to end, but don't worry. As long as minds exist, we're going to keep creating new environments. And if we're Buddha minds, we can create Buddha environments. Do you understand?
Yes. And it was a huge, it was like a balm listening to it.
There you go.
Because I know logically that there has to be other sentient beings out there, yes, even on a number game. It would be human to assume that we're it. But it was a watch.
But it was encouraging. It's encouraging too. Because the Buddha's view, as you know, is minds never begin to never end. And until we get out of samsara, until we quit delusions and become bodhisattvas and Buddhas, we're going to be continuing to suffering, create our ridiculous suffering realm. So there's never ending. Don't worry about it. There's always going to be a world somewhere. But we have to create pure worlds and virtuous worlds. That's the job. It's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Yes. Thank you, Phoebe. Most interesting. Thank you, sweetheart. What else is there, people? Nobody else. Anything? Alona, good talk to me, sweetheart.
Hi, Venerable. Thank you for your teachings.
Yes.
It was so interesting to see you in Venice and all this water behind you. I was there in September. It was no water.
Oh, you were? It wasn't water.
I was so shocked.
So maybe it's the tide coming up and down. But you would have seen all those little bridge type things that you walk above the street. That's for when the water comes, because it's just common now. It's common.
I've seen it. Yeah, it's like it's a strange. I was there first time too, and it's quite strange place. It's beautiful. It's strange. I don't think it's romantic, but it was strange, and it was just shocking to see all the water, like you said, because I've seen one way, and it's going to be like it feels like, okay, this is the end of humanity. Something happened.
That's right. Exactly. I know.
But my question, I practice my Buddhism, and I love it, and my mind is steady and happy. And something else comes, and it's so that deeper happiness, that deeper beauty. And I'm afraid to, I want to protect it. I think, I don't know what it is, but I don't want it to come out. I don't know if it makes sense, but
okay, let's analyze it. I understand, Alona. Let's analyze what that means. Okay, let's analyze it. 1, there is our mind. 2, there is the rest of the world, the physical, including the body and the things we see, the people we meet, the environment, like I said before to Phoebe. So 1, there's our own mind, and 2, there is what we observe, what we live in, and what we experience. So, so basically what you're describing in the mind, we have these different things. We have delusions and we have virtues. And then we have certain things like, say, happy feelings. So there's a really clear analysis in Buddhism. So if you are having happy feelings, so you wake up in the morning and there's a sense of well-being, that happy feeling is marvelous. So, you could have that happy feeling and you might live in the poorest country on the planet, but because you've got such virtue from the past, such merit, that every day your mind is happy. That's the fruit of past virtue. Every millisecond of a moment of happiness is actually the fruit of a past virtuous action. That is it's the fruit of that. That's the actual cause of a happy feeling. So if you have just happy feelings because your mind is content and virtuous, that's valid. That's marvelous happiness. Now, the fact is, when you say you're afraid of losing it, be more precise. Of course, you don't want happy feelings to end. So if you suddenly get a big headache and your head is blowing your mind and you feel great suffering feelings, then the happy feeling has gone. If a person punches you in the nose, the happy feeling will go. But if the more we train our mind alone, and this is the point, no matter what external condition you have, when you're really trained and advanced as a practitioner, you can never lose your happy feelings. The world might be ugly, you might have no money, you might have a headache, but your mind is so stable, you can sustain your happy feelings. And that's the fruit of masses of virtue. So of course it will go up and down, but if you've got lots of attachment to the happy feelings, just like that person in the relationship, they had very blissful feelings in their relationship. But because we believe it's caused by the other person, you cling to the other person. Whereas if you know the happy feelings are the fruit of your own virtue, also when you've got a virtuous mind now, when you're more kind, more loving, more generous, more forgiving, more wise, less attached, less angry, less depressed, then naturally your mind will be happy more. When we can sustain that, and then also from the past have happy feelings, then whatever happens in the outside world, you'll be content, you'll be fulfilled. So don't be afraid of losing happy feelings, but observe your mind, and you can grow. So by practicing virtuous actions and by purifying your mind, you're sowing seeds in your mind karmically that will ripen as future happy feelings. So they're not just random things that come. They're like you've got a garden full of vegetables. They're the fruit of the seeds you planted. So happy feelings are the fruit of the past seeds you have planted of being virtuous. That's the literal explanation. So keep practicing more virtue. Are we communicating?
Yes, yes.
Good. So be delighted. Happy. Wonderful. Who else, people? What else, people? How's it going in Santa Fe, Coral? How's the ground? How are the grounds going? Vision is coming?
The vision is coming. I've been working on the drawings for the entrance.
Amazing.
And I'm going to meet with Charmaine tomorrow to work on where all the driveways are going to go and the parking and all the irrigation underneath it.
So excited, darling. Are you enjoying yourself? I bet you are.
I am so enjoying myself. I've been working on clearing away my schedule here so that I can focus on that more. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Yeah,
I can't wait. I'll be back on March the 4th. I'm going to be so looking forward to seeing what's there.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
Good, Coral. Who else has got a question? Anybody? Anybody got a question? No. Hello, Alan Berkowitz. Where have we met before? Have we met before, Alan? Unmute.
No, I'm aware of this organization.
I can't hear you so well. Your voice is a bit cracked.
Sorry. I just joined FPMT.
Oh, okay, good. Wonderful. Well, welcome. Good.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Happy to see you. What else, darlings? How are you, Vanessa? What's happening for you, sweetie pie?
I am doing good.
Cool.
It's actually a little cloudy here in Southern California for a break.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
I have a question. So I have I've been having elbow pain for a couple months. What's the best way to remedy that? Would it be like to do like a medicine Buddha?
What kind of pain, darling?
It's tennis elbow.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's been going.
Well, first of all, I always want to talk about the physical side. You can't get solutions to it?
I've done acupuncture. I've seen.
It's not helping?
No, it's not. I think I was just doing too much gardening the past summer and work.
But any other methods you're using? You don't have any little osteopaths or anything?
I've just been doing icing.
Have you?
Yeah, my own workouts, like, with arm strengthening.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Well, honey, as far as there's two things out there. Of course, it's the body, do whatever we can to heal it. But of course, it's the mind as well. And that's just an interesting discussion. This is where it's hard, Vanessa. So we know very well, let's say, if we've talked about this before, if some external event like your boss is mean to you, then that triggers unhappy feelings, doesn't it? We know that. But it's exactly the same scenario here, because the mind and the body, even though they're intimately connected, they are actually different entities. But our assumption is, isn't it? It's very deep. Our assumption is, I think because we so deeply grasp at our body as being me, as soon as we have a pain in the body, we assume it's normal to be upset or angry. You understand what I'm saying? We assume that. But this is the revelation when and it's not easy. My God, Vanessa, even just having a little headache is so painful. We can't change our mind. But the real one is when we realize that it's the physical pain. But when we start to see, let's say we have aversion to it, we wish it would go away, we get stressed out, we feel frustrated. What we've got to understand, and you have to look at your mind here, is that it's the aversion and the frustration and the wishing it would go away that actually increases the suffering. This is what's interesting. I mean, I don't know about you, but you must have heard about all that lots of people who are dealing with pain. There's all these different strategies that people use now in the world, and I'm saying in the ordinary world, to try and alleviate the experience of the pain by learning to change our mind about them. That's what I think is quite a revelation. It's not easy because it's so instinctive, because we all desperately don't want pain. So we assume it's normal to be upset or irritated. The point I'm saying is the irritation and the annoyance are mental and the pain is physical. So we can change our attitude towards it, which of course is not easy. Oh my God, it's so difficult because the body is the closest thing we've got, But when we understand that the mind and the body are different, and we can learn to interpret the pain differently. I mean, this is where when you hear about the great bodhisattvas, the holy beings who've got no delusions left, when they have suffering, they're almost like, it sounds too weird for us, I can't believe it, they seem almost joyful because they're happy. They try to have an attitude towards their pain that feels, if I could take upon myself the suffering of all others, and that makes them happy. I mean, it's so weird, but this is they become joyful when they're painful. This is something else for us altogether. So, honey, at least get the view to realize that observing your response to the pain, seeing if you're getting irritated, see if you're feeling upset about it, see if you're feeling angry about it. And that's just an attitude. And if you can even lessen that attitude and not say the words like, oh, I wish it wasn't here, oh, it's not fair, I wish it would go away, that's anger. And that adds to the stress, that adds to the suffering. So that's a really good, for me, a very powerful point, actually. Do you understand, darling?
Yes.
Well done. But try to get it fixed, though, darling. Try and make it better. Do you take painkillers? Surely that would help.
Yeah. The thing is, I haven't been really consistent with these treatments I'm follow. So, yeah, I'm starting to do. Good. I'm in between jobs, so now I can focus.
Yeah, well done, girl. Try and fix it, please. Be pain-free if you can. All right. Thank you, Vanessa, darling. Who else is there? What time is it? 20 minutes we've got. What else, people? Any other points to bring up? Things to discuss? What would you like to talk about? Anything at all? Say what you'd like to talk about. Nothing. Mary, you got something to say, Mary Camille? No? What's on your mind? Anna has. So you're relieved of it, Mary. Anna's got something to say. Tell us, honey.
Hello, Venerable. Just a quick point related to Vanessa's question and comments. And we have Gina de La Seville. She's our Fuchs and Nobulings Qigong therapist, if you like. And she has helped me no end beyond my imagination with a slight physical heart issue, which was coming in. So there's things like acupressure you can look up on the internet as well. But I'd recommend, Vanessa, if you get to go to one of Gina's classes, she'll be able to give you some good advice. and
So
working with the more subtle energies of the
I
body.
think she does qigong or something, Vanessa. So you must know about these, you know. Vanessa would know. Yeah, but that's so so the things she teaches help you, do they, Anna?
Absolutely, yes. No, it's complete. It's nearly relieved it. Yes. So I don't need any medication or anything.
That's wonderful.
Just a quick point. Well, a quick question on query. Not related to me. I've mentioned it before. A friend of mine, a mother of four, wherever she moves, she seems to have some kind of spirit that moves with her. And
She what? Sorry, start again. She what?
She seems to have a spirit or some kind of entity that comes along with her, and it
She
seems
feels
to.
that, does she? She feels
Yeah,
that, does she?
yeah, it's attracted to the younger males. Her grandchild, who is three, and two of her sons, mainly the older son. And he's had someone come round before and kind of exercise the house, if you like. And that did help, but now his ADHD is back. He's got sleep apathy. He feels like something is crawling into him, and the shared experiences between the children.
I understand. So I think it's important. I think it's best thing, Anna, darling. I think it's best if she wants some advice, it's best that you write it down exactly and email me, and then we can check with the lamas in Kathmandu, and we can see if there's any practices that can be done, because the Tibetan Buddhist perspective is definitely there are beings who have karma with certain people and who harm them, quite literally. So she has that view, and so I think it's best you email, explain exactly what's happening, and then I can see if she'd like to have us check up on the lamas and see what we can do. Okay, it's best.
Thank you.
All right, sweetheart. What else, people? Because it's a totally common experience. And of course, this is not the Western medical response, but it's certainly the Buddhist one, you know, it's not uncommon. There are many beings in other realms, like spirits, there's literally disembodied beings with whom we have some karma from the past, who literally harm us, can possess us, talk, you know, harm us, make us sick. This is not an uncommon thing. I mean, the Tibetan doctors, by looking at your urine and feeling your pulses, they can see, you know, this. They say they can see the indication of this kind of interference, as they call it, you know. Yes, Vanessa.
Yeah, speaking of that, you know, picking up energies around us, like I work in a hospital, and there's just so much crazy energy that goes in. It's like there's a lot of drug addiction, homelessness, psych issues.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of where my tennis elbow kind of got worse.
You think so? How interesting. And that's interesting, Vanessa. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just the work, you know, I have to use my arms and my hands to push blister packs and all this.
Exactly.
So with that being said, it's how do I can't quit my job because
I know, but you can protect yourself. That's why that's a good point. You know, there are various practices to do. Many of the practices have a very specific function of protection. Some of the Buddhas, like doing certain mantras, you know, like medicine Buddha, for example, or even there are some quite specific ones that, you know, that can be very, very powerful. So there are lots of those practices, Vanessa. I mean, it's very individual for the person. So, you know, I think, you know, medicine Buddha is powerful enough. It's pretty, if you really have confidence in it and say that mantra and imagine being protected by the energy of medicine Buddha, this can really protect these ones. Any of the Buddhas, really, if we really have confidence, they can certainly protect us, Vanessa. It's a very good point. So have you moved from Las Vegas? You've gone to California?
I'm permanently in California.
When did you move?
Back in May.
And you're happy with it?
I am. I'm glad.
I'm very glad. Where do you live then?
I live in Orange County.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Mm-hmm. Where exactly?
Costa Mesa.
Oh, okay. So Orange County, that's near Laguna Beach, isn't it?
Yeah, I live 20 minutes away from there.
You go to the group there now, or you don't go?
Yeah, I'm still involved.
Oh, I'm so glad, Vanessa. I'm so pleased, darling. What a good move. Well done. I'm very pleased. Well done. Good. So that's helpful, Vanessa. Thank you so much. So what else, darlings? What else to say?
Venerable, we have a question in the chat. So it asks, I've noticed when I meditate and try to focus on the breath, my mind tends to go to future planning. I'm trying to analyze my delusions. Is schedule planning a delusion? If so,
Darling girl.
What would it, if so,
Yeah.
what would it be in terms of attachment, aversion, etc.?
I
That's from
understand
our,
exactly. So first of all, let's join the universe, whoever you are. It's totally, totally normal. The nature of our busy, busy mind, which is attachment in this case, or one of its functions is to always to busily project into the future. We love to think about the future, unless, of course, the future is horrible. Therefore, we can't bear to think about it. But part of the busy mind, we always got to think of something. Attachment's always got to think of something and prepare something and analyze something and have an opinion about something and project into the future. So, honey child, projecting into the future per se is not necessarily deluded. I mean, if you have to write down in your calendar that you have the dentist in a week, that's not deluded, it's a fact. But if you go on and on and on about it and imagine the dentist and imagine getting there and imagine driving the car or imagine all the fear, that's ridiculous. That's attachment. So the future, if we're still alive, will exist. It's okay. So the thing is, to make plans is fine, but to obsess and grasp at them and think about them and project or be fearful, that's where the delusions come in. That's where the delusions come in. So if you're watching your breath, darling, it's a good practice just to train yourself. It's like a discipline. The watching the breath meditation is a real discipline, you know, because the mind craves to think about something and there's a laziness, will just keep thinking. So it's a really good discipline just to focus and watch the breath. You can't stop the thoughts, so don't worry about that. But the biggest difference is what you're trying to do is simply pay attention to the breath. All the thoughts are busy, but you don't go to them, you don't follow them, you don't pay attention to them. You can't force them to go away, but you let them come and you let them go. This is a very specific skill we are trying to cultivate. It's just like being on the freeway with 6 lanes of traffic. You are in your lane, minding your business, doing exactly what you have to do, totally focused on when you put the foot on the brake, when you put the foot on the accelerator, when you swerve, you're watching your piece exactly. But honey, you know very well, you can see all the other 6 lanes out of the corner of your eye, you know what they're doing, but you don't get distracted by them. That's the skill. So don't have the misconception that you're supposed to not have the thoughts. It's too difficult to not have the thoughts. That will happen eventually. But the job is to simply watch the breath and allow all the thoughts to go chat, 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 but you don't go to them. You don't pay attention to them. That is the skill to cultivate. I mean, it's not a delusion in general, but of course, if the mind never stops, that's attachment. Of course it is, yeah. Or it's exactly the same if you're angry with your boyfriend, you can't stop thinking about your boyfriend. That's anger. So attachment is all excited and perky. Anger is kind of resentful and upset. They're both deluded. One is all perky and up, and one is all down and miserable. So, but you let the thoughts come and go. That's the skill to develop. And just watch the breath. Go in and watch the breath come out. It's a real training. I hope that helps. What else? What else, people? 10-2. It's my virtual. It looks pretty virtual, doesn't it? Can you see it's virtual? It looks pretty good virtual, actually. Many people in their virtual, it looks like they disappear into it. But my virtual looks pretty good, doesn't it? Are you seeing what I'm saying, you people? Does it look like a good virtual background? Let me look at it myself. Good. I'm very impressed by it. Let me see it. I'll look into myself for a minute. Yes, pretty good virtual. Look at it. Oh, yeah, if you move around, you can see it's virtual.
Yeah.
Hey,
we have Amanda with a raised hand, Venerable.
Okay. I'm just impressed with my virtual picture. Now I go back to you, okay?
Thank you. I have a question.
Go on, darling. Talk to me.
Okay. For the most part, I feel very balanced. Like you were talking about the relationships with other people. Like it was even like my birthday yesterday. My boyfriend forgot to even say happy birthday, and he was
no, he's mean.
No, it didn't even bother me at all.
You're a Sagittarius too. Well done, girl. You're Sagittarius.
No, I was like, yeah. He was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh, it doesn't. I'm not ego grasping at it. That doesn't bother me at all. Like totally fine. It's like I'm very good in most of the ways, except when I go around my parents, and I feel like I get absorbed in their energies and I don't know how to, and that's the problem. Like I don't have any problem anywhere else, but with the parents, I can't, I don't know.
No, I don't. It's a very deep connection since we're born. It's such an intense one. And I think, Amanda, because we've got so much, I mean, what's the nature of, I don't want to kind of make it be too personal, but what's the nature of the dynamic? They're neurotic and deluded, or they're demanding. What's their aspect?
like that, like ego, like my mom tends to have like this victimhood, everything's, you know, happening to her. And I have a lot of compassion and I want to help her and end that suffering, but I can't. And like, so I just get drawn into that energy and I don't know how to not.
Okay, good, darling. So let's analyze it, Amanda. It's a really good point, darling. So the energy of attachment in that case is, since you're a little girl, Amanda, since we're tiny children, because we love our mummy and daddy, our deepest kind of good side of us is to want to make them happy. You want to be a good girl. So if mummy praises Amanda when she was a little girl, Amanda will feel good. And that's wonderful that mummy should do that. But if mummy's never satisfied, or she tells you to be quiet when you're being nice because she's upset and irritated, and naturally, since little children, we take it personally. Of course we do, Amanda. So if your mother's neurotic, naturally we think we must have done something wrong. So because you want them to be happy, but the trouble is, from the point of your point of view, there's a virtuous part of you that wants your mummy to be happy, and that's compassion. But it's the attachment, since a little girl, the neediness to be seen as a good girl. So when your mother's never happy and she's always complaining, of course, it's a direct insult to you. It is automatic and a very ancient habit. So what you've got to practice doing is that it's got nothing to do with you. This is where the practice is. You've got to realize, you know, this is your mother's own dissatisfaction. It's your mother's own attachment, her own neediness, her own pain. And it's even if she thinks it's you who's causing it, you have to know with certainty it is not you. But it's a very old habit because we've had it since we're born with these people. And it's not, you know, so you've got to learn to be more, like you said, with your boyfriend, you can be. That's what you've got to learn with your mummy and daddy, to be there. And so almost like for me, how often do you go to see them? Not that often, is it?
No, like once a month or more, because my dad has health issues. So I do visit and stay with him regularly.
Okay, so you've got to have real strategies. And so one of them is, you go to stay, or you just go for an hour, or what?
I'll stay, and I'll stay for a day or a week or so.
Okay, so good. So you've got to think like this. You know the dangers. You know how you get sucked in. That's your attachment. It's an old habit, because you want to be seen to be a good girl and you want them to be happy. But this is the tragedy, Amanda, one point before I say more. One of the things is to realize, no matter how hard you try, this is the point, you try to be kind to your mother, and then she ends up still being dissatisfied. You can't but help think you did something wrong. You feel as if you failed. Are you with me here? But you did not fail, Amanda. Your job is to be loving and kind to your mother, but it's her job to be content. And you can't force that. So that's the one thing to really remember. You do your best and you allow her to be the way she is. And it's like the way we say it is, don't take it personally. It's very profound. So the other one is, if you do know you're going to go to see your mum, you know you're going to be there for a day, you just decide, I'm going to leave myself at the door. I'm going to be there for her. Let her say what she likes. Let her complain. Let her be miserable, and not try to make her better. It's not your job, Amanda. Allow her to be the way she is. And when you can be more objective like that, you will have compassion, because, honey, she is the one who's suffering. Do you understand, darling? You've got to, it's a hard practice with our parents, because since you came out of a womb, for God's sake. And it's very connected to this neediness to be seen as a good girl. And we take everything very personally. Because, I mean, the fact is, if you were kind and then your mother loved you and was very sweet, you'd feel so happy, wouldn't you? You feel like you're being successful, but you're not succeeding, or you're being kind to her. That's all you can do. She has to learn to know she has to be happy herself. And like many people, she might never learn that. So you've got to let her be that way. Don't take it personally. And in the end, you'll really see that that's her suffering, you know.
Thank you.
It's not easy, darling, but remember these things.
Thank you. Yes. Because, yeah, I mean, when I go, everyone notices, like, my energy changes by the end of the week, and then I'm not as fun to be around, and it's
exactly
hard.
That's because we allow ourselves to get influenced. You know, it's a very hard one to remain objective, and that's the inner work that you have to do, to sort of know we're not like on a string with each other. We're separate people. And you just, because why you're unhappy, this is the analysis. You see, attachment in us is very deep. Attachment at the most fundamental level wants everything to be lovely. So the deepest instinct of attachment in you wants it all to be lovely. And every time it's not lovely, then your aversion arises. And that's what drags you down. It's not your mummy dragging you down. It's your own attachment and your own aversion. But these are very subtle. They're very deep inside us. They're very hard to really. So we just got to practice and practice and practice, and eventually we'll be able to be objective enough. Just sort of like you're visiting, it'll be like you're visiting a stranger, and you'll be able to see their suffering objectively, and you won't get hurt by it. It takes time, though, Amanda. And this is where the fact is. If, say, we're so fragile and we're so influenced by it, maybe we have to stop going. You've got to make that decision, So the thing is, don't build up the tension before you go. If you're going to go, you decide, I'm going to go, I'm going to do my best, I'll leave myself at the door, and I'll just be there for her and not resist the stuff. It's the resistance that builds up the drama, and resistance is aversion. It's very subtle. You with me?
Yes, that's what happens. Is I feel like I slowly wear down over the week, and then I feel like I should visit less time, or like if I feel like I don't want to go around, then it's kind of like I feel guilty that I'm not being the good child.
Exactly right, Amanda. So that's the point. You've got to be accountable. You've got to know what you can handle and what you can't. Because you could go to that house 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and your mummy will never be happy because she'll always want more. That's the terrible suffering of attachment. It's a bottomless pit of dissatisfaction. So so do what you can and be reasonable with yourself. And then whether you stay for, maybe it's, stay for less time, because no matter what you do, it'll never be right. So you can't try, don't judge your efforts by her response is what I'm saying. You do your best, Amanda. Very powerful point.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Yes, Phoebe.
I was just going to say, building on what Amanda was saying, I was in class last night, and Venerable Semke said something that was mind-blowing. I don't think I've ever thought of it this way. She said, I am not responsible for other people's emotions or feelings.
That's right. Yes.
And it never really occurred to me. You'd think at 45 that would have occurred.
I don't know. It's very powerful. So what's interesting, though, isn't it, Phoebe? On the one hand, like I said to Amanda, we have to want to make people happy. That's love. We have to want to help take away their suffering. That's compassion. But it doesn't guarantee that it will happen. So this is what I'm saying. Don't judge our success by their response. But we feel if mummy responds nicely, we think, oh, I must have succeeded. If mummy responds miserably, we think I must have failed. That's the mistake. Exactly right. Exactly right. That's very powerful. But when we get that, we were able to stay objective about it. It's very good, Phoebe. Thank you, darling. Yes, Anna, what's happening there? Anna.
Hello, Venerable.
Yes.
We have a question from Yvonne.
Yes, Yvonne. Good, darling. Talk to me.
The question is around aging and importance. She says, I recently turned 60 and I'm having a tough time living life fully. There is a lack of apathy and a lack of joy.
Is Yvonne here or is Yvonne in the distance?
Yvonne is with us, yes.
Are you Yvonne, darling? Talk to me, sweetheart.
Hi.
Hello.
So what's happened for me, I think all of my life, I've always had goals and I've been focused on taking care of others and doing things. And that's what I do in my work also. And I'm still working. And somehow once I hit my 60s, it's like I've lost that sort of what is this stage of life like? What is
I hear your point, darling. So, on a practical level, then you've got to really just look at the things you're doing and tick the boxes. So, if you look at your work, you've got to ask freshly because things change, our lives change, our needs change. So are you still really content with your job? Do you think it's a fulfilling job? No.
No, not at all.
This is something to listen to. Have you got the option to do different things or to give it up? Is that an option?
It is. I think that feels like the tough part. That's what was so helpful hearing about the attachment.
Yes.
Because it's like I don't know what else I've
okay, so I understand. So listen, then this is where we got to be courageous because we're sometimes, Yvonne, you've got to really be courageous and look carefully at everything you're doing and everything is, because maybe it's time for a change. But the thing is, you're probably a sensible girl and you've got pension plans and whatever, Social Security. You've got to be courageous and really look at, what do I want? Don't say to yourself immediately, oh, no, I can't do that. You've really got to allow yourself the courage to say to yourself, Yvonne, what do I really want? And often we've suppressed it all our lives, Yvonne, because we're trying to be good girls and do the right thing. So it doesn't mean you have to do it, but you've got to allow it to come to the surface. You've got to allow yourself to ask that question, and you've got to allow yourself to really look at what it is, because much of the time, most of us just suppress it. Oh, no, I can't do that, and we leave it there. So, honey, it's a really good exercise. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It doesn't mean you even have to change yet, but bring it to the surface. In other words, if you had like 6 months to live, what would you do, Yvonne? So why don't you tell us even now? If you had 6 months to go, babe, what would you do this moment? What would change, Yvonne?
I would turn in my resignation. That would be the first thing.
There's the answer. And then you've got enough money to live until you do something else. Because this is the point. As soon as that one door closes, a whole new series of things will be able to come in. We have to allow them to come in, Yvonne. So, honey child, follow your heart. Let me tell you this. I found this so interesting. Many people have heard it. There's this woman who wrote a book years ago. I can't think of her name. She was some Australian nurse who worked with the dying in England. And she wrote a book called The 5 Greatest Regrets of the Dying. The greatest regret, Yvonne, of ordinary people was, I didn't follow my heart. I did what I thought was expected of me. That's the way most people live their lives, Yvonne. So you ask this question of yourself, and you have the courage to even bring it to the surface in your mind and actually look at what you'd like to do. You haven't made the decision yet, but you've got to allow the thought to arise first. Don't just suffocate it and say, oh, no, I can't do that. That's what we spend our lives doing. And then, so really look at it, Yvonne, and have courage. And the other thing is this. Dalai Lama always says, always aspire to do what's most beneficial. And that doesn't mean holy. To be doing what is most beneficial would be you using the best of your energy to do what you really think is the best. Always aspire to do what is most beneficial, both for you and others. And that can lift you and open the door to new thoughts and new things. So, honey, start that thought process and don't be afraid. Do you understand?
Yes, definitely.
Good. Because you're not in prison, honey. You have the power to make any decision you damn well like.
Yeah, thank you.
Brave. Be brave, Yvonne. Open new doors. Find new parts of yourself. Sometimes the thing is, sometimes we wait till things happen, like the husband dies or he leaves us, for us to do these things. We've got to give ourselves our own wake-up calls, Yvonne. So now you've turned 60, it's time. Go for it, honey.
Thank you.
All right? Good, darling. Time to go home, people. I'll go back to my little house where I am here in Padova. You go back to where you all are. I'm so happy to see you all. And next week, I think, isn't it? Next week I'll be here too. So good to see you all. I'm so glad you're in Orange County, Vanessa. That's great. I'm very pleased. And you be brave, Yvonne. And next week I talk to you. Let's tell us what you thought. And thank you, Amanda. Realize your mummy is the one who's totally the one who's suffering. And keep yourself space. All of you, thank you so much. Lots of love. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Alona. Thank you, Coral. Thank you, Alan. See you next time. Bye, sweethearts.
Thank you very much.